Time to join. Again, welcome to this Snack and Learn webinar. Today's program would be about sustainable communities in Denmark, and it's about how we try to bring focus on sustainable development goals, net zero, and sustainable solutions when we're working in WSP with these communities. My name is Søren Gabriel, and I'm head of R&D within climate and sustainability, and it's in the Department of Sustainability, Energy and Climate Change in WSP Denmark. I've got quite a long background, 25 years in the company, and I've been working with a lot of different things. And in this, with this special topic, I've got a personal interest because I've been initiating one of the communities I'm going to talk about, and that has actually been central for a central reason that we got the job to help the other communities I'm talking about. Briefly about the agenda, I'll just tell shortly about trends for sustainable construction in Denmark, because I think that's an important context. And then I will try to define, tell how we are helping to define sustainable development goals and solutions in projects. And I'll then go through two case studies, the Hyllegård Høje, which is quite a big project, and then the Meliusia establishment, where I live today. And then in the end, there'll be questions and answers. I hope you'll join all the way through. Well, about the sustainability in Denmark and how we try to regulate the sustainability in constructions. In Denmark, I think compared to other countries, the Scandinavian countries, we've got quite a lot of focus on sustainable development goals. And that means that net zero hasn't until now really been a part of our agenda. But on the other hand, we have the focus because we've got a national goal of a 70% reduction in greenhouse gas emission by 2030. And I'm sure as we are approaching 2030, we'll start talking about net zero, and the goal is already defined, but still we're focusing on 2030. And we're trying to do that with the building regulations, and the focus in the building regulations has over a lot of years been energy saving and thereby reduction of carbon greenhouse gas emissions. We are also working with certification in construction, and in Denmark we're using the DGNB, which is inspired by German certification rather than we use BREEAM or LEED. And just to give an impression of where we are when it comes to energy consumption, we are in a temperate climate. We've got cold winters, but not very hot summers. So we don't use cooling for single-family houses or for housing in general. So our energy consumption, that would be for ventilation and pumping and heating, and then of course for appliances and light. But when you're measuring on housings, what you have to fulfill would be a goal covering heating, ventilation and pumping. And in the 2018 building regulations, we've got a limit of 30 kilowatt hours per square meter per year in total energy consumption. Then to be more ambitious, there was defined the 2020 building regulations, where the energy consumption was reduced by 30% to 20 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. And it showed out after quite a short period that this is not cost effective. So now it's the BR18 regulation that's in charge. And then you've got the German passive house standard at 15 kilowatt hours per square meter per year in the bottom, just to give you an impression how low we already are. And in the bottom, you can see what is the energy consumption of houses depending of the energy class from A to G, where G would be a house built in the 50s in Denmark, where you would have an energy consumption of about 400 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. In the 70s, the consumption would be rather 150, and today's standard would be 30, and we built to a standard of 20 kilowatt hours per square meter per year, and that's a reduction by a factor 20, which I find amazing, just by cleaner technology and better construction. Apart from energy, I would say that over the last year or two, there's been a new focus on sustainability and life cycle assessment in the building regulations. Last year, we had national guidelines for voluntary sustainability class, and it'll be mandatory in the building regulations from 2023. And we had this spring a national strategy for sustainability in construction published from the government. So we are quite hard on that right now. And the focus in these new guidelines, that's life cycle assessment on the building and building materials from cradle to grave, is life cycle costs, which is a focus point, and then chemicals in building materials and the coupling between chemicals in indoor air quality and indoor daylight, of course, and noise, indoor noise from outside, and indoor acoustics, and a lot of other topics, but these are the main topics. And I'm looking very much forward to have these regulations, because the harder the regulations, the funnier it is to be an engineer. Until we have these regulations, we have our own way of working with sustainability. So what we're doing is we're defining main goals, and we define that, of course, based on the regulations, but also on the sustainable development goals, on future ready, and of course, if the client has got special goals, they're included. Next thing would be to find out, where are we actually building? Are there specific local opportunities or constraints for sustainable solutions? And then next step again would be to concretize the goals, the main goals, to more project-specific goals, where you could say, did you reach the goal or didn't you reach the goal? So that's a goal part, and that's actually working with engineers. The hard part, that's defining goals. Identifying solutions, that's easier. First part of it, identifying solutions, that's the really easy one, where you tend to end up in greenwashing, because you would say that our standard solution already fulfill these goals. We are very energy efficient. We are almost carbon neutral, and that tends to be greenwashing. So the creative part, from my point of view, is when you try to find the solution in the goals. So you start in the goal, and that could be sustainable development goals, and how could I then, with my solutions, contribute to reach these goals? And then, before choosing which solution you're using in your construction, you have to do some kind of evaluation. We did that in Hyllegård. That's just 60 km west of Copenhagen. We're building 6 shared living communities, and there are going to be 180 families living there. It's quite a small village, some 3,500 inhabitants, and just west of this village, we've got this site where we're developing. And it's a special place because the developers, it's a young couple that made a smartphone game, and suddenly got wealthy, and they decided to do they wanted to do a difference, so they decided to make these sustainable housings. And so they're private, and they're driven by idealism rather than professionalism, because they're not used to this, but we have a great collaboration. So they wanted us to help working with sustainable solutions. And I think the reason we were chosen is that I, as well as my colleague Patrick, we both made co-housing projects and work with sustainability in that relation, and that's why we could help them when it comes to net zero and biodiversity and so on. So we've been helping to define project goals, and we've been helping with site development, local planning, construction, and we are now establishing the first development. It's hard to work with goals if you're a professional or if you're a non-professional. It's a lot easier to suggest solutions than it is to be concrete when it comes to goals. And what we did was we used the Meliusia tool, which is a dialogue tool for SDGs, and we already had a presentation about this. And in the bottom of the presentation, today's presentation, you can see a link for this Meliusia presentation. So that was one thing, and it's a way of, it's like a brief workshop, 2 hours maybe, where you go through the SDGs and define the goals for the projects. Another way to work with goals would be like what I call here a storytelling and a virtual walk and talk, where we went through the area together with the client. They were some 5-6 persons the owners and some of the people involved in the projects, and we went through the drawing. I started and I walked into the parking lot and say, well, I'm at the parking lot, and what I can see here is there's a lot of shared cars, and of course I can only see electric cars, but all the cars are on the parking lot because I think cars are not allowed in between the buildings in this area. And then I just look up the lane and I see Rebecca, and then Rebecca takes over and she's telling what she's seeing. And thereby telling these everyday stories, you can start to define what are the underlying qualities and the underlying goals. And that was really efficient. And with that approach, we succeeded to define a lot of quite precise goals. At the right side here, you can see the goals under the headline Health and Wellbeing, where there are quite a few goals. And on the left, you can see all the goals that we've shortened down to like assessment criteria for when we're going to discuss quality of different solutions. Next step was that we are going to make a design manual for the project, and the design manual focused a lot on utilities, water, wastewater, and so on, and then on buildings where we did life cycle assessment, or at least stated how they were going to work with life cycle assessment, and materials. And then we had a section about landscape and sods and biodiversity. When we then start discussing sustainable solutions, of course, the client, they've got their ideas of what could a sustainable solution be. And one example is they had an idea that organic household waste, they wanted to make like a facility for local composting of organic household waste. And if we're going to say if that's a good idea or not from a sustainability perspective, we have to know what is the reference solution. And in this area, the reference solution is that the organic household waste is put into a brand new biogas facility where we can actually get energy out of it, and where the nutrients will be used on agricultural soil. So the reference solution is always important if you want to compare or decide if a solution is sustainable. And then with that reference solution in place, you can start to start defining a solution that can supplement or substitute the reference solutions. But all the time you have to compare them to the reference solutions. And then when we discuss the solution, we have some that are mandatory and there's some that are recommended. We have some ideas which are more crazy. And then of course, we have to provide space for evolution, because this will not be built, all of the houses, until 10 years from now. So instead of just making everything mandatory, we have defined processes, for instance, for choosing building materials. So we have a dynamic project out of it. Here we got an example of what we call a multicriteria assessment, where we are assessing a solution and comparing it to the standard solution. So the standard solution, that would be the black bar in the middle, and then the colored bar shows how does this solution perform compared to the standard solution on some topic. And this is how it's in the design manual, where you've got mandatory solutions, recommendation, and ideas. And just to go deeper into a few of them, we had one goal that was net zero from day one, and we decided to call it a solution as well. What's in that is that the full energy consumption of the household must be covered by PVs, and that must be based on roof PVs. And then we've stated how much energy would that be per square meter per year, and then we put on top of this, we put a consumption for transport. And then we've made an assessment, how does this perform compared to the standard solution, where you just buy your power from the grid, and you can see where that performs better and where it doesn't make a lot of difference. Another thing, again, about power, this is about using low energy consumption utilities. And you can see, again, this is a very good idea. Recommendation would be a local smart grid, where you're measuring your consumption and trying to steer it. And so we've got a lot of ideas like that. Next step is, as I said, we're helping with site development and building the first 30 buildings there. Next case study, and I'll try to run through it a little faster. I can see time is running. That's Meliusia, another shared living community. That's where I live. It's made in a former airfield base, just 20 km west of Copenhagen. We're 29 families. We started in 2015, and everybody were moved in last year. I've been living there for 3 years now, and that's 29 different houses. We've got 5 sizes, and it's developed by us. That means we've done everything like site development, financing, and so on. Of course, we've had constructors, but we've been doing all the thinking, and then that thereby saved a lot of money. A few more photos here. It's a mixed community with old people like me and families with a lot of kids. We just got number 30 last week. We have defined our goals. One goal is about diversity, and that's diversity in who's living there. And if we want diversity, we have to focus on costs because it's so close to Copenhagen, it's so expensive. So we've tried to keep the costs low. And then we're focusing on quality of life, that's health and well-being, and carbon footprint and biodiversity. That's our main focuses. To go through a few solutions, we focused in the solutions on indoor climate, that's overheating, daylight, and acoustics. We have a lot we focused a lot on low energy consumption and low carbon footprint from building materials. That means we've been building from wood and paper wool. We're using heat pumps to reduce the energy consumption. And the heat pumps are based on contaminated groundwater. I'll come back to that. And we have not installed PVs because there are restrictions in the local planning that keeps us from doing that. To avoid overheating, which was one of our goals, it's quite a big problem in single-family houses in Denmark during the summer. We are working with sun protection of the southern side of the houses. We are avoiding large windows to the west. We're paying special attention to small rooms, especially if they're heading west, because they're getting very hot during the afternoon. It's hard to shield them from the sun. And then we have supplemented all the houses with like natural ventilation. So all the houses, they have it's very high to the ceiling. I think we've got that's my living room. We've got like 5 meters 50 or something like that. So we can use the chimney effect for natural ventilation during the summer. And just for another thing we made here, it's our heating system. Our heating system is based on heat pumps, so every house has their own heat pump. But instead of like having a ventilator water heat pump that you find in many single family houses, or like a water based on pipes in the soil, we have a well with polluted groundwater, and it's being remediated some 200 meters from us. It's a former airfield, so there's a lot of polluted groundwater, and we just take a little heat out of this groundwater, and then we pass it around the houses in a brine circuit, and thereby we have the hot side of the heat pump is 10 degrees compared to normally 0 degrees during the winter. So we have what I used to say, the most energy efficient heat supply in Denmark. And our energy consumption for this would be like 1,000, 2,000 kilowatt hours per year per house, which is extremely low. And there's been a lot of publicity about this. The left article, that's from one of the daily newspapers in Denmark, and the one to the right that's the Danish Engineering Society that decided to visit us. And it's a good way to of course mention where I'm living, but on the other hand say that we've been doing this together with WSP, but because I'd say that without WSP and all the competences we've had in WSP, we couldn't have succeeded in Meliusia. Yeah. Reference material, I just mentioned the Meliusia SDG tool. There's a link for this presentation. And last year, my colleague Patrick had a presentation about shared living communities, which we are consulting in as well. And just a few concluding remarks. As I said, life cycle assessment, that'll be a part of the Danish regulation in a short time from now. But when we start talking to our clients, we see that sustainability and the understanding of sustainability is a lot broader than just life cycle assessment. And we have to handle this, and part of that is, of course, future ready. We see an interest from shared living communities, but also from private clients, and we get a lot of jobs out of that, and I hope even more in the future. Thank you, and now for the questions session.
Thank you. Thank you, Søren, for a fantastic presentation. Before moving into the Q&A period, I would like to remind attendees to enter your questions in the question box on the GoToWebinar platform, and also you can download a PDF version of the presentation from the handout box on the dashboard. I will start with the first question. How does a project like Hurtigrøy, I hope I'm pronouncing it good, so how does a project like Hurtigrøy affect future projects so they can become more sustainable?
I would say it has been challenging for us as consultants to work with Hurtigrøy. It has been challenging in many ways because they are, as I said, they are non-professional, so we have to try to handle a new group of clients, and it has opened the door for a new group of clients. Next week, I'm going to another municipality in Denmark to talk about shared housing, and that's for a group of private citizens that are interested in that. I learned that from Hurtigrøy. It's been challenging when it comes to sustainable solutions as well. They're building like a communal house, and they want it to be really sustainable. So they don't want any sealed membranes, and they want to build it in straw and so on and so on. And we have to find out how to do it, and we never did it before. So it's an opportunity to get to get wiser in this, and of course, when we've done it once, we're experts.
Fantastic, thank you. Next question, how do you see the differences between working with Future Ready and taking the SDGs as a starting point?
Yeah, I would say that we have been working with SDGs for quite some years, since 16 or something. And then we were introduced to Future Ready when we became a part of WSP. And I think it's interesting because it's another approach and another way to get in communication with the clients. There is a lot of focus on SDGs in Denmark, so we cannot avoid mentioning them. And I see the difference is that SDGs, that's based on goals, where Future Ready, that's more based on trends. So it's more like pointing out opportunities or obstacles. So we use it a lot to define what will we need in the future. And then it has contributed as well with a future perspective on the SDGs, because I say that the work with the SDGs tend to become static. What is it like today? And again, if you go with a Future Ready mindset, if you naturally say, what would it be like in 20 years from now? So we use both.
Thank you. Next question, what is the result of a life cycle cost analysis for a project like this? Does it make economic sense now? And if not, when?
Yeah, we didn't make a total life cycle cost analysis, but I'd say that compared to the houses around us, there's quite a big development around us, and we are saving 25–30% compared to the houses around us. But that's because in Meliusia we're doing a lot of the buildings ourselves. But I wouldn't say it's not more expensive to build in a sustainable way. Rather the opposite, because choosing wood from bricks, that actually saves money. At the same time, you get a better net space in your house because the walls get thinner by using wood. So thinking wisely, there's money to save. If you want to save a lot of energy and get to this 15 or 20 kilowatt hours per square meter per year, it can become more expensive depending how you make your house. But it's not necessarily more expensive.
Thank you. How do you regulate contractors and transport of material to site? For instance, is material delivered by e-truck or by diesel, and is material sourced locally, reducing transport emission?
Yeah, how do you regulate contractors? If I knew, I would be a rich man. Contractors are a problem. I mean, it's crazy what we've been through. We've been focusing on waste and on reducing waste from our construction. And the way the contractor is working is that they're just bringing in materials enough, and they want to make sure that they don't run out of materials. And when they finish a house, they just start throwing out brand new materials because it's cheaper than bringing it somewhere else. So what we've been doing there is try to save them and reuse them. It is unless you go to the very big certified contractors, it is a huge problem. And we are not even near to discussing energy consumption from trucks and machines. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Is it the client demand that drives the development in sustainable construction, or is it us as consultants?
Yeah, yeah. I work in the division for environment, and I'm used to being a consultant. As a consultant, you try to raise the bar all the time. So in the discussion with the client, you say, "Oh, we could do this even better." And I would say that the tradition in the construction branch is rather the opposite. Would this really be necessary? Couldn't we just so and so? And it's in Denmark, at least, I'd say that it's in construction we are very conservative, and so that way I would say it's to some extent it's the clients that actually want us to be more ambitious, and that's challenging, but it's driving the development. But I hope within a few years from now, when new generations are introduced, they'll bring in the idea even at the construction companies and consultants.
Thank you. I will take the last question. Do you feel that the construction industry is ready with sustainable solutions of the future?
No. No, they're not. And it's a pity. A lot of the solutions are already there, but they're not documented. And for that reason, they're afraid of using it. The site just next to where I'm living, they have had to change a lot of the soil because it was polluted or it was like too soft to build on. And you can bring in a lot of reused materials, but they decided to use like brand new gravel, and we are out of gravel within 20 years from now in Denmark. We have to import it then, but it's too cheap, and they're not geared to do it. I talked to their engineer. WSP is not a part of it, and he was like, "Yeah, but I don't want to take the responsibility for something that I don't know," and that tends to be the way they're thinking, and that's when it comes to materials, but that's the same when it comes to solutions.
Thank you. So it looks like we're at the end of our webinar session. Please feel free to follow up directly with Søren via the contact details shown on the screen. And I would like to thank all attendees for joining today. Thank you, Søren, for a fantastic presentation. And thank you everyone for your time.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.